I was definitely in that New Jersey game. I was rooting for at least get the point. Get the point. Don't fuck this up. At least get the point.
The point drastically exceeded expectations.
The win was just beyond the pale. The win was unexpected.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was the whole, I expected to just get blowed up, and they started off the game getting blowed up.
I mean,
right away.
The fact that I typed the words into Google, lowest scoring NHL game in history, and the answer was the Rangers had 0 shots and 0 goals, obviously, in 1958 against the Red Wings. They hold the record by a wide margin. The second lowest is 7. All right. I'm streaming. We're live. Let's just do this. I am hitting record. I have hit record.
I have also hit record.
All right. Wow. I see the little WAV. Looks fine. Stream's live. We're good. I'll just start. It's Thursday, December 15th, 2022. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight, we are talking about Hanukkah.
I could do a Hanukkah show.
It's only fair. It was Scott's idea because we did a Christmas show.
I just don't have any other ideas.
Did a Christmas show in 2016. But, you say that. One thing, a common dynamic, especially for the listener who sometimes watches the live stream, especially when I click go live long before we actually start the show, when we're trying to figure out what show to do, the pattern is I'll have 10 ideas that Scott vetoes, and Scott will have 1 idea that I veto, and then we're stuck, and then we proceed. So I came up with a policy a long time ago, and this is the first time I was able to enact it. My policy was, if I ever say, what should we do the show on, and Scott suggests something, I will automatically select it no matter what, and do the exact same thing he does to me. All right, you can drive. Good idea. Let's do it. I feel good about this show. But I think there's enough to talk about. But in the opening bit, as you know, I talked about on the show, we moved pretty quick here. The 2012 Chevy Cruze that was a gift from Emily's family that got us through COVID, hiking and skiing, blew up in semi-spectacular fashion and is gone. And I bought a new devil car that has 4 miles on it. We have a Toyota Corolla Hybrid, all-wheel drive 2023. We bought the only one the dealership had. And I hate buying cars, especially like at dealerships.
I don't know why you didn't do what I suggested and hire the car buying expert.
I looked at that, and get this. This was actually really easy. And car buying is a lot different than it was the last time I bought a car. Because you have to understand, the last time
one time, and
I've done it twice.
I probably didn't do it the best way.
In the year 1996, I bought with a $3,500 check that my parents wrote for me, a Laser. Like, that was my first car. My parents gave me a check. I gave it to some guy who gave me this car. This was one of those, like, buy it from someone in their own driveway and drive it home and hope it doesn't break. And then in 2001, I bought the purple Sunfire that you remember and love. The one where one time...
You said I love that.
So we were playing Blades in the Dark the other night, and Alex plays with us, and I was reminded of an instant that I'm pretty sure you were there for, you and Pete, where we drove that car somewhere, and I stopped to replace the tire because I got a flat, like I had to put the donut on. We're sitting outside like a gas station, and I remember that I jacked the car up, and I put the donut on with you guys' help, and then when I pulled the jack down, the car didn't go down. The shocks just stayed fully extended, and the back of the car just stayed up, like, at an angle.
I have a memory of a car doing something like that and, like, having to sit on the car to squish.
Yeah, I remember me and Pete got on the back of the car and kind of jumped up and down until we forced the shock back down so we could drive home. And I never got that fixed at any point. The shocks were still broken when we were living in Beacon.
I mean, clearly they're not supposed to do that.
Oh, no, they're not supposed to do that to a degree that... I understood.
I mean, in some cars, they do that on purpose. Right?
Yeah.
The rider go, right?
I guess on some level...
Not supposed to do that by accident.
When we were in college, I understood that was not supposed to happen, but what was I going to do? It's not like I could afford to fix anything in that car. I could barely afford to change the oil. But
afford to keep the car from getting repoed.
yeah, the car got repoed. Someone stole the car later, and I never knew what happened to it. And I just gave up on it, actually, at that point.
I don't remember it being stolen.
That was in Beacon. When we moved out of Beacon, I parked it actually outside Emily's apartment. And then I couldn't come back for like 2 days because a giant blizzard happened. And when I came back, the car was gone. So I called a bunch of tow places, and none of them had it. Like, I called all the impound lots I could find in the phone book. None of them had it. So I filed a police report like, yeah, I guess my car was stolen. And then I just didn't do anything because I didn't care. Cops never called me back. And that car just disappeared. To this day, I have no idea what happened to that Sunfire, nor do I care. If someone stole it, like Godspeed, it didn't have cooling, nor did it really have oil in it, or power steering fluid, or transmission fluid, and the brakes didn't really work that well.
Mm-hmm.
But buying a new car is extra special because not only have I never bought a new car, I don't think anyone in my family, my direct line, has ever bought a new car. Like, that is not a thing. I didn't. I could never afford that. And by the time I could afford it, I didn't need or want a car. So buying the car, to tell the short story, I go in, and it's hard to get this car. Like, there aren't a lot of hybrids available for all the reasons you can read about on a real news site. It's actually really hard to buy that kind of car right now. Used ones are going for like the same price as new ones, which is extra fucked up. So the car I want costs sticker $28,900. Like, that's the sticker price. And in the old days, yeah, it's not too bad. In the old days,
a lot more money than I had when I bought a car, and the car I bought was $19,000.
Yeah. So
2006.
I Google around, and basically every dealer within a reasonable trip of New York City adds $3,000 to $4,000 to that. They're actually selling them way above sticker because they're in such high demand. Like, you can't get them cheap. You're going to pay extra. This dealership,
markup than I thought.
Yeah, it was actually like, that seemed reasonable. Like, I could deal with that, especially because if I finance it, like, inflation's so bad. Yeah, loan me money. Good luck. So, the dealership's like, yeah, that car's worth about $41,000, and that's the price that they gave me when we went in and looked at it. And we just played dumb, and I was like, yeah, okay, cool, whatever. And we acted like we kind of liked the car. Then we left and came back a few days later, said we want to buy it. And I didn't haggle until we had filled out the financing form all the way to the bottom. Like, all that was left is to sign my name on a piece of paper, and then the process of buying this car would start. And then I was just like, hey, so all the other dealerships are only marking these up by like $3,000. So why does this one cost $41,000? And the guy did the thing where he pretends to go talk to his manager for like 2 minutes, and he comes back and he knocks it down to exactly what I said. And I was like, okay. Like, we both like, okay, that was the game. The game's over. And I bought the car.
But you did financing?
So I did financing because I learned the interest rate my credit card company, like Chase, offered on their special deal was like 7.5%. Fuck that. The dealership was like 6%, but it's Toyota-thon. And there's one of those deals that you're not supposed to be able to get, 3.49%, which is shockingly low. Like, I'm literally better off financing and taking the money I would have paid cash for and just putting it in the stock market for 2 years.
I mean, that may be true that they might have had a deal going on, right? But everything that I've heard suggests that, you should be able to get financing elsewhere that's like basically even when there's a deal that's lower than
no. So right now, 3.5%.
When you buy a car with cash from the dealer, you should get a lower price.
Oh yeah, so that's the thing I was getting at. That was the conventional wisdom. That's how I've always approached cars. That shit doesn't work anymore. I was trying to like talk about total price, and the guy was like, the total price is the same no matter how you finance. If you put no money down, if you pay in cash, the price is the price. They don't care about that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So 3.5% is apparently insane. And I get the impression, because they basically said, oh yeah, your credit's literally perfect. So we got that deal.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a problem.
Yeah, so I put 10 grand down. And the other thing, there is no prepayment penalty. So I could just pay the whole thing off tomorrow if I wanted. I could turn this into cash and pay like a couple dollars worth of interest effectively.
Oh yeah, you could always do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Some in the old days, a lot of financing wouldn't let you do that. My Sunfire, if I paid it off early, I would have had to pay a penalty. Not that I could have paid it off early. I mean, it got repoed. I couldn't even pay it.
I'm gonna just out of curiosity. I mean, the problem is I would go and like type into a website to get an auto loan quote. The problem is I know from having worked in literally.
Oh yeah, it'll do a hard check on your credit.
No, that's not the problem. I don't care about that. The problem is if I do that, I will start being inundated. People trying to sell cars.
Oh my God. I clicked on the website like last week on a car, like some random Toyota dealership. Like, I'm interested in this one. Those motherfuckers would not respond to an email. Like, they didn't email me back, except they tried to email me and they fucked it up, so I went to you. They just called my phone like 5 times a day for weeks.
Yep.
I just blocked the number and didn't buy the car from that dealership.
Yep. Anyway,
I have a devil carriage now to replace the one that blew up, and it's pretty cool.
I'm still probably not gonna buy one forever.
Yep. You can still borrow mine if you ever need a car. Just don't crash it because it's a nice one. No.
Last year, this year's almost over, but I'm not gonna need one again this year. But in all of 2022, there were 2 times that I wanted a vehicle.
Well, you tried to borrow mine that one time, and you couldn't get the parking brake unstuck.
Right. So one of the times we wanted to go apple picking, and we did not. We ended up just not having the car, and there was no really reasonable alternative. So we simply didn't go, and it wasn't that big a deal. It was disappointing, but no, one day, one apple picking. Okay.
That happened to me there were 3 instances over the last 2 years. Well, after the last year, where I went to get that car at 6 a.m. to go ski, and something on it blew up, and the trip failed, and my whole day turned into car repair shit.
Yeah. And then the other time was on Thanksgiving, which out of our control. Our family Thanksgiving was in New Jersey.
Yeah.
We could have used a train to get there and back, but we got relatives to drive us there, and then we used a train to go home.
Funnily enough, that's when the cruise blew up. We drove to Thanksgiving, and on the way home at midnight on the GWB, it blew up.
Yeah, it was a minor inconvenience. We got, we spent a slight amount of time and money in transport, right, on train tickets and whatever, but compared to the cost of car renting or buying, it's like the cost of
I will say I did calculate, because we do, since COVID started, we ski pretty much every weekend in the winter, and we hike a lot of weekends in the spring and fall.
Just don't do that.
No, those
could save a lot of money.
Those are our primary hobbies, like biking, skiing, running, hiking.
You don't need the car for biking.
Yeah,
it's literally the opposite of car.
Yeah, the only time we ever took the bikes anywhere in the car was taking them to Wildwood. But it ends up being cheaper to own this car for us for that profile.
you're basically, it's
only though.
If you insist on doing those activities, owning a car to do those activities is cheaper than doing those activities some other way.
Now the nuts part is
what's even cheaper is not doing those things.
Yeah, but those things are great.
Anyway.
Of course, the car costs, considering how much we're spending to fly to Colorado to ski in January, the car is it rounds down significantly.
You could just not do that either. All
right. So, in the news, I got a little bit of a geek bite because I've watched the show, at least the first season of it with Emily. We might do a little special and talk about it. The Ted Lasso show, which...
That's basically what I know about this
All right, let's see what you know about it.
It's basically the only thing on Apple TV Plus that really anyone cares about.
That is true. It is literally the only thing on Apple TV that anyone gives a shit about.
People get Apple TV Plus just to watch this one show, right? So it must be, have some sort of, goodness to make people, right? At least it's got enough hype to make people go out and get Apple TV Plus just to watch one damn TV show, right?
Yep.
And then it's about so basically, it's some soccer coach who doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, and it's silly or heartwarming in some way. The end.
So you're close. That's like the surface detail. And even watching the first episode, it kind of felt like that. The full what the show is actually about is there's a Premier League club, and like the owner.
So it's a Premier League. It's like the top of English
Yep.
soccer.
It's a Premier League club. Like it's set there. It's realistic and serious. The owner like has an acrimonious, fucked up divorce, and his wife, who he cheated on, ends up owning the club. So she tries to pull a producers and destroy this club, get them relegated down to the bottom, like just burn everything.
Yeah, they could be relegated.
Yeah. So that's her plan. So she hires basically like
Why would that be your plan though? If you own the club, you're just gonna lose money doing that.
she's rich separately, so she just wants to spite her husband because the one thing you know about her husband when the show starts is he loved that club more than anything on earth. That is all he cared about was that club and cheating on her.
Okay.
And she basically hires effectively like a high school / college level American coach of sports who literally does not know anything about soccer.
Mm-hmm.
And hires him and puts him in charge of this. Like, he doesn't know how soccer works, really. Like, he doesn't know the rules.
Yeah.
Dude doesn't know relegation's a thing until about halfway through the season. Like, there's a great scene later in the show where they explain it to him, and they're like, what? You don't have that in the U.S.? And he's like, God, no. What the fuck is this all about? Get demoted? How does that work?
How much the Detroit Lions suck, they will always be in the NFL. They won't be sent down to some other league.
But then they flip around because they're like, what does shitty teams in the U.S. do? And he's like, well, actually, depending on the sport, they pretty much tank and play badly on purpose, hoping that they'll get better players for the next season.
Oh, so the guy, so the trailer gave me the impression that the Ted Lasso coach guy was like, you know, sort of like a Dumb and Dumber.
No, that is the lie. That is not what this show is about.
He understands. He's common sense. He just doesn't know anything about soccer.
Yeah, so his deal is that he is a fantastic coach of sports players. He just happens to have never coached soccer before.
Oh, so he's just out of his element. He's not an idiot.
Yeah, in fact, I will say, having watched the entire first season, the way the show really goes is that he is a fantastic coach and nobody believes in him and he's actively being sabotaged. But over time, he actually does make a difference and make the team better. And
So it's almost like a One Punch Man where everyone looks at him and it's like, who's this bald moron guy, you know, who's weak and not powerful, but actually he's the strongest one.
And if I had to say what he's like as a character, take Ned Flanders and cross him 50-50 with our friend Chase Gordon.
Okay.
I am literally, that is exactly who this character is. This show is fantastic. It made me cry about a fake soccer game, like actually cry at the end of the first season because it starts out silly. The characters almost seem like caricatures. It almost, the first few episodes feel like Disney kids special. Like imagine the Mighty Ducks, but if it wasn't the story of a piece of shit learning to be good in the course of coaching the team, if it was
that's what the trailer seems.
Yeah, imagine if it was a guy who is the best guy making everyone else around him better over the course of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But where it tricks you is as the show goes on, like one by one, all the characters get more complex and more human until the show is a very serious, very heartfelt, very well-written drama. And if you watch it, I'm not saying you should watch it. I think you'd like it. I don't know if you'd like it. I bet you would get a little choked up in the last episode of season 1. I would bet a token amount that would happen if you watch this show. And it sneaks up on you, just like Ted Lasso, the character, sneaks up on the characters in the show. It also gets soccer really right. Like, there's a moment where whenever they talk about the game or do strategy, it's really accurate and really right, like in a really good way. It treats soccer seriously, that would have been a deal breaker if the soccer was fakey, but no, the soccer is like hyper realistic, and that helps.
All right, so the news that nobody could escape this week is we have achieved fusion.
Yeah, we have beaten Unity.
We've achieved fusion before. This isn't the first fusion.
We have achieved fusion that generated definitely more power output than the power input in a very controlled short experiment.
Well, it depends on your interpretation, right? So the energy, basically the way the fusion, the simplest explanation of how the fusion machine is set up is that there is some target made of some material, and there are lasers, and the lasers fire at the target simultaneously.
Nah.
Right? And the lasers apply enough energy, pressure, heat, whatever, to the target so that atoms fuse together into bigger atoms, right? And then energy is released, just like in a star, right? Where, hydrogens combine into heliums and energy is released, right? Enough to warm a solar system.
Yep. Not just hydrogens and heliums. They all keep combining until, and they make denser and denser elements as time goes on.
Right. But it's the opposite of fission, like a nuclear weapon, right? Where you break the atoms apart and the energy comes out, right? It's the opposite.
Though
energy still comes out.
I would also point out that all modern nuclear weapons are fusion, and fission is just a baby step before the fusion.
The point is that usually when we've tried this before, right? The energy that you need to put into the lasers, right? That's the energy input that we're measuring, is how much, basically you plug the laser into the wall with your kilowatt, right? And you see how much energy the laser needs.
But what we're not measuring, for practical reasons yet, is the rest of the setup, like the whole facility that makes this happen that uses energy is not part of this equation.
Exactly. There's all kinds of other energy that had to go into this, right? It's like someone had to physically put the target there and line everything up and monitor it and measure it and the lights for the people to see what the fuck is going on. The heating and cooling for the people who are working there. Like there's so much other energy. The energy to go into manufacturing all the equipment. And it's like a lot of energy went into it that's not being measured, right?
Yep. But the lasers put about 2 megajoules of energy into this experiment, and about 3 megajoules of energy were released by the fusion that happened because of those lasers, that is why this is big news. They call this ignition, in that this was a proof of concept that was the next milestone. Everything we've ever done researching fusion was basically trying to achieve this as the milestone that leads us to the next milestones.
Right. So to give you sort of a ruler, right? A measuring stick, right? 2 megajoules doesn't mean much to most people, right? 2 megajoules is basically like eating 500 calories of food. So like a candy bar, maybe?
4 slices of white bread, give or take?
Yeah, something like that. So imagine setting a candy bar on fire, and all the energy that comes out of the candy bar, it's just a pile of carbon is left, right? Whatever. And then suddenly there's like an extra half a candy bar.
Yep. Take 2 Snickers bars, mash them up in your hand, reform it. You get 2.5 candy bars.
Right. At least energy-wise, that you lose the matter is.
Well, I mean, matter is just energy.
Well, I guess there is going to be the fused matter is now combined in some other element now, right? You have that left. That's your byproduct, right? You start with some smaller atoms and you end up with bigger ones.
Imagine a distant future where we're just having fission and fusion back and forth, oscillating, generating energy.
Maybe, but that sounds a lot like it's gonna break the laws of physics, right?
Well, I mean, there's entropy. There is always entropy. Do not get me wrong.
The point is, you could conceivably, right, depending on what targets we have and what lasers we have, because basically that's what the experiment is now, right? Is basically keep altering the targets and altering the lasers until you get, even better, right? Because mathematically, to make a power plant out of using this method, you're going to need to get a way better target, right?
Yeah.
A target that can withstand a lot more.
Oh, yeah. This method is not going to be how we generate usable power with fusion. This is how we figure it out.
At the lab where they do this, the lab is operating 24/7. They can recharge and fire the lasers about like every 4 to 6, 8 hours. There's like some huge hours long interval. Like they can only make an attempt like 3-4 times a day.
Yeah, like in a mech, you fire those PPCs. You can't just fire them again immediately.
Right. Mathematically, for a power plant using this technology to function, they need to advance this to the point where the lasers fire like 10 times a second. Right. We're like going pew, 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 and just keep basically, think of it as like button mashing and squeezing out energy. Right.
So there's a gain factor, which is the line, because basically they have for the first time gotten the gain factor above 1. And this experiment achieved about 1.5 gain factor. according to this Vox article, which has real citations, to generate enough energy to be usable, not counting all the logistics of that, just the rate of return, we need the gain factor to approach 100. So we got to get 3 orders of magnitude ish for we got to really move further. This is the equivalent of, hey, we proved that we can make a rocket. Now let's try to go for the moon someday.
Yep. The thing that still concerns me, it's is obviously this isn't really very dangerous at all, right? Just shooting a very small object with some lasers, right? Once every 8 hours, right? But, if you have an actual fusion power plant, it's like you're basically making a star, kind of. Yeah. Right?
Stars are by some definitions of stable, extremely stable, and by some definitions of predictable, extremely predictable.
Yeah, but it's like I just feel like if you're making a star, imagine if 2001 was 2010 or 2001 where Jupiter became a star or whatever. Right? It's like even that is going to have some negative consequences for Earth, and that's pretty far away, at least somewhat far away, really close cosmically speaking, but. Right, it's still over there.
I think that's a kind of moot concern in the sense that
making a star on the Earth, it's sort of like, hey, when I set off the fireworks, you run away from them. It's like
what you're imagining?
If we're gonna make a sun, I feel like we should sort of run away from it.
This is why now I'm imagining the dumbest thing.
Like a bad spot.
The dumbest thing any human ever invented, other than the former guy's NFTs, is the Davy Crockett, which was the single person launched nuclear artillery that you basically, if you fired it, there's no way you would be outside of its radius.
Yeah.
But I would say, while that is true, that concern, really, that is the concern of any power generation system, because to generate a lot of power, you have generated a lot of power. Just like if you have a really good battery, that battery is a grenade. That battery is full of an extremely...
Going to be something that is releasing energy, right? It's like if you have a megawatt power plant, well, there's some megawatt of energy in there.
Yeah.
In some form. It could be electrical or it could be gravity.
What if we build a Dyson ring? Guess what? Now we have death rays sending energy back to the earth. That could easily fuck up.
That's moving so fast that it has, a megawatt of power. If you get hit by that water, it's going to hurt, right? It's, it's dangerous. Whatever form the energy takes, kinetic or otherwise, if it's a large amount, and if you touch it, it's going to hurt, right? You have to contain it and control it and stay away from it.
But I guess when it comes to generating power, the thing that a lot of people who are anti-nuclear power or just have weird or bad opinions about power generation, they always look at one way to generate power and consider it in a vacuum instead of considering it compared to all the other ways we have to generate power, because none of them are good. None of them are other than wind power, which isn't 100% either. Nothing is without problems. And it's just a matter of which problems are we willing to accept, which ones are necessary. It's a balancing act. And probably for at least the next 1,000 years, humans are going to generate power via a lot of different mechanisms, because we don't really there's no answer to this question.
I mean, I think the way I think about it is this. You're a human being, right? It's like you need to power your body, usually with food, right?
But food comes directly from the sun. It just passes through a few hands along the way.
The point is I don't see... I mean, there are some people, but most people are not just eating one food, right? Yep. You need to eat a bunch of different foods.
Also, I want to point out how many people who do eat just one food in the Soylent Fail Reddit are posting about things that are obviously the symptoms of malnutrition.
Yeah, but if our society needs energy to function, in our industrialized society at least, right? We can't really be getting it all just from one thing, right? We got there's different places, there's different needs, right? They've got a lot of, no matter how many ways even if we greenify all of our energy on Earth, right? And only stop burning dead dinosaur, fuels or whatever, we're going to have to use more than one kind. A little wind there, a little water there, a little, I don't know, whatever we come up with.
We will definitely need,
I don't know,
traditional nuclear power, just better, more modern reactors for hundreds of years at minimum.
Anyway, that's the news.
Yeah, but it's a huge news. It's actually a big deal.
News.
It's probably one of the most important, like, energy scientific developments in the modern era.
Yeah, I mean, how much time was there between, like, Thomas Edison has a light bulb and everyone has a light bulb?
Yep.
Right? It's like we've reached the first part.
All right, we can jump on to the rest of the show. Put a little marker here. But anyway, things of the day. So, I was a mountain biker. I am no longer a mountain biker, but I don't know a lot about modern mountain bikes, but I know a comparative a lot relative to modern bikes about 90s era mountain bikes, because that's when I mountain bike the most. And while I had heard of this kind of thing, I never really seen it. I didn't know it was
seen or heard of it before just now.
But what this is, if you look at the picture of my thing of the day, you will see a bike that looks like a joke. This looks like the kind of bike that some weird YouTube channel will make. Like, we made a bike out of lead. How does it ride? Terribly. Ha Square wheeled bike. Look at this shit. But
when I saw the image of it, I said, this is like some horrible old product someone made that was super dangerous and didn't, and was limited and then was taken off the market for being ridiculous.
So the reason I didn't know about this bike or its deal in the 90s is because this was the most expensive, best kind of mountain bike in the world at the time. Mountain bikes in the 80s and 90s were not like mountain bikes today. They were not safe. Not that modern mountain bikes are safe, but they are much safer than like what I was riding. This was the top tier. This was like the fanciest, specialist, weird mountain bike that the pros would ride. This is the Slingshot. It does not have the entire triangle. You got to look at a picture. It's got the rear triangle of the frame, but then the tube under your crotch goes across to the handlebars, and from there, you've got the fork that goes down to the wheel with the front suspension, that same shitto 90s front suspension that every mountain bike had back then. And there's no other bar. There's just a cable holding it together.
There's no bottom tube. It's just a cable.
Yep. And as a result, the bike flexes a lot. And you might think, wouldn't it just snap? No, you're thinking about modern bikes made out of like aluminum or carbon. This bike's made out of steel. So that's actually not a problem. Steel bikes will flex just fine. Watch the video. It's only 10 minutes long, and it goes into extreme detail with someone riding one in the year 2022. They got one, they restored it, and they rode it, and it is an amazing mountain bike. It's actually pretty good, even by modern standards, because this design has shocking advantages. The only reason we don't make bikes like this today is that we developed extremely modern suspensions that could not have been made with material science in the 90s, and we have developed like modern carbon fiber that is like nothing we had in the 90s.
I'm surprised that, with all the different bike events I've been to where people bring out all the weird bikes, I've never seen one of these.
I can tell you why. The video I watched this video twice. It was so good. The reason why is that, one, there's a carbon fiber part on this. And if you remember, this is from the 90s. Yeah, that shit is dodgy. If it breaks, you got to make like a custom one. But two, there's a critical piece that is like the flex plate that connects this thing together. Not the cable, but like this flex plate. It's made out of a weird material. It's basically irreplaceable, and it degrades over time. So you've got to like cut and scrape the old one out, acquire or make an equivalent flex plate to replace it, put it in this bike, and trust it not to kill you. So even the guy riding the bike in the video is like kind of afraid the bike's gonna hurt him the whole time, because even though it was vouched for, it's kind of hard to make these bikes safe, and nobody's making parts for these things.
Yep. All right. So, thing of the day. In New York City, down on Aster Place in Manhattan, on the west side. There's
by that cube?
Westish, eastish. I guess it's technically east, but whatever.
By the big black cube.
Yeah, it's nearish to the cube, like a block or two away from there. In NYU area, right? I guess it's definitely, I guess it wouldn't, even though it's not super close to the water, I guess it would still technically be East Village. Anyway, there's a haircut place. You go down these stairs. You have to go down, like you're on the sidewalk, and it says Aster Barber or whatever as a sign. You have to go downstairs like you're going in a basement, and there's a haircutting place, and that place has been there for fucking ever, right? In fact, when I first worked in New York City and we lived in Beacon, I would go get my haircut there because I had hair. There weren't any good haircut places in the Beacon area, and it was conveniently near my work.
Yeah, back then, you know where I got my haircut? At Grand Central, because it was really convenient, even though it cost like
one time.
It cost like 4 times a normal haircut place.
That place isn't there anymore.
No, it's not.
But anyway, so this place is like a really special kind of place, right? It's like when I was a kid growing up, I would go to a barber, and it was like 3 old guys, right?
Yeah.
And they had 3 seats, and then they had 1 seat that was like an old metal car for the kids to sit in.
Yeah.
And then they had a TV playing some, sport or whatever, in the city, it's usually soccer. And then they got all those old timey seats and a bunch of old magazines, like golf magazines or whatever, right? You know the kind of place, right? A white guy barbershop.
Yeah.
It's completely different from a black guy barbershop, right? Which is even cooler. But, anyway. So this place, though, it's a lot like that, right? Except it's an everybody barbershop, right? It's like every kind of age, every kind of person, right? And it's enormous. Like, it's not just like this one straight line of chairs, like a handful of them. It's like this big, giant open room with no walls other than the surrounding walls, right? And chairs and mirrors just scattered all about, right? And it's like you feel almost like you're going into like a hotel or some shit because you don't, maybe you've been going there a long time and you know who your person is, right? You know where their seat is, you know what their hours are, and you can find them. But usually you're going up to the front desk and there's a person there who's like managing, right?
Yeah.
They got everyone's appointments and you're like, you might say, I want to see so-and-so. And they'll be like, they're not here right now. They're busy.
Would you be willing to accept Joey Jojo?
Right. It's like there's so many barbers down there, different hairdressers and whatever with different, specialties and whatever, but usually if you've never been there before, you just be like, hey, I want my hair cut. And they look at you and they figure out who would be good for your hair. Right. And they don't do this out loud. Like the person at the front just looks at you and then looks at the schedule and who's and they're like, go over there to number or whatever. Right. And there'll be a person there to cut your hair. Right. And all the the hairdressers, they got, they really personalize out their little zone, right? They got, photos and all kinds of shit going on, right? So it's a really a special kind of place going on there. And mostly NYU students, but all kinds of people going there, famous people, people who don't have a lot of money, people who do have a lot of money. Anyone in New York who needs a haircut, it's a place to go. They don't rip you off there, right? And so this place during the Pandoodle almost went OOB, right? Which would have been a travesty.
I mean, I didn't get any haircuts during the entire Pandoodle.
Right. Not people weren't getting haircuts at all, but also, people weren't there.
Yeah.
Commuting to work, students not studenting, right? It's like, so even if you were getting a haircut, you were getting a haircut in Astor Place in Manhattan. And so that would have been real sad, but this cultural institution was saved by somebody. Thank you, person who saved it with your money.
A sophomore.
Yep, you were great. But then, now that, NYU's back doing its thing, right? Times are not normal, but, it's recovered somewhat, economically at least. A student at the NYU, right, came in and they did something amazing. I don't know why no one ever thought of this before. Somehow they arranged to basically, at night when this place is closed, it's a big old room, right, with barber chairs, but nothing else. Just fucking has some parties down there. And the owners is like, well, no one's cutting hair down there at that time. It's going to make us money. Why the fuck wouldn't we do this? It's like the perfect place to do this. What would be the objection? Nothing. It's not like bothering anyone. No one lives there, right? It's in a basement. It's legal, right? And so sure enough, they're having parties down there now, which is pretty freaking awesome. And the New York Times did a little, I guess their 1-day strike is over. They will walk out, so it's okay to read them for now. And they did a little piece talking about the parties going on down there. Sometimes the attendance is waxing and waning based on, what day it is, right? Stuff like that. But they're getting turnout. They're getting big time DJs down there. It's like, that's pretty awesome. Why didn't that should have been going on for a long time? Why has that only started recently?
I love in this article the profiles of the people, because they are
whoever came up with this idea, genius. You're going far in life, right?
In the meta moment, the GeekNights Book Club book, Alif the Unseen. It's pretty good.
A lot of progress.
I am too.
I still see Alif though, so I'm not sure.
Well, you know what? You know who doesn't see Alif? At least as far as I've gotten, the government. The government does not see Alif yet, and that is
trying.
Yeah, they're definitely trying. Alif is this book is exactly what it was described to be, which was an unnamed Middle Eastern security state, a young Arab Indian hacker protects watched groups from surveillance and tries to stay out of trouble. Yada, 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 Jinn.
The DJINN genie kind, not the drinking or card game kind.
What I do appreciate is I still am convinced that the framing story is 100% going to be directly relevant to the details of what happens.
So my theory of it being a Princess Bride deal, I was wrong. It is not a Princess Bride framing story. It is just part of the story.
Yep. That's just that old man knew some magic and
Yep.
So this is good. Read it. We'll do the show in January or February at the latest. Definitely by like the first week of February at the rate that I'm reading it.
Yeah, I'm reading it, every day or so-ish, and I'm 30 to 40%-ish done. So.
Otherwise, we will likely be at PAX East with a couple of panels, but do not expect us to be hanging out there the whole weekend. Still seems a little too soon for that. Also, it's a 4-day con, and considering most of the people we know are still going to avoid cons and it's going to be fully masked, I can't imagine I would have a lot to do if it was just me and Scott for 4 full days in Boston at a PAX.
We could do a lot of video produce, content producing
we could
stuff.
And we'll see. It's really going to depend on what panel or panels we do and when they're scheduled and who else is going and what the situation is in terms of the poop chart. And then we're going to decide what to do.
Yep.
So yeah.
Hanukkah?
Yeah, Hanukkah.
Rim probably doesn't know anything about Hanukkah.
So, you know what I know about Hanukkah is, one, as a kid, like, to be really blunt, I grew up, especially in like middle and high school, in extremely white suburbs in Michigan, like around Detroit. So there weren't a lot of Jewish people in my schools. Like in high school, there were 5 or 6 Jewish kids and I knew most of them. And that was it in the whole high school.
Yep. So, I mean, in my high school, or I guess in all of my schooling, right?
I mean, my elementary school didn't have any Jewish kids because it was the Catholic school. You had to be Catholic or lie about it.
Sure. But, when I went to school, it's like Jews were definitely a minority, right? It was mostly, white Christian peoples, right? But the number of Jews in the area where I grew up and Jewish kids I grew up with percentage-wise, it was much greater than the percentage in the U.S. and much, much greater than the percentage in the world, right? In the U.S., right, about like 2.5% of the U.S. population of adults are Jews, right? It's a really small number. And in terms of the world population, it's something like 0.2%, like not even 1% of people are Jews, right? So, but where I grew up, it was probably, I don't know, it might have even been 5%. Who knows? I can't count.
Yeah,
right?
You had 5%. I had 5.
But anyway, so Hanukkah, right? It's like when I was a kid, it was just sort of like, hey, we're Jews. They're not, right? They got Christmas. We got Hanukkah, right? I didn't understand, the history or really care or anything like that.
Nah.
It's like, that's just how it was. And I thought I was getting a good deal. I was like, I got 8 fucking days. Your shitty Christmas, only 1 day.
Yeah.
I was like, and I was thinking, I got 8 days. I'm getting 8 presents. Sure, obviously you're not going to get 8 bomb presents, right? You're just gonna get, like, 6, 6 okay presents, a good present, and a great present, right? No one's, unless you're rich or some shit, right? You're not getting 8, Nintendo games. That's not happening, right? You get 1 Nintendo game, maybe a Lego, and then some other stuff.
Every now and then we'd have a blowout Christmas, but they were rare. Like the year the Super Nintendo came out, we got the Super Nintendo, and every launch game was basically the Christmas gift. Every single launch game. But the next Christmas after that was somewhat paltry because that was a very expensive Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, but then it's like the whole time, it's like, I wasn't actually going over to other people's and seeing their Christmases. I was seeing TV Christmases, right? I went to some kid's house, right? Lived down the street. I went over to his house on late on Christmas.
There were more than 8 gifts under that tree, weren't there?
And I was like, what the fuck is this bullshit?
Yeah.
Why? How come under your tree there is like a full set of Marvel superhero cards, like the whole fucking set, right?
Yeah, when we were kids, like there was a lot of small gifts.
I was like that. I'm like that alone is like a full present. I'm like, and you got like 2 Nintendo games under there, and you got like a football, and I'm like, what is this? This is Christmas. You got 1 day, you got 1 thing. What the fuck is this?
Yeah, we get 1 Christmas. There's a tree, and they stuff. If your parents were middle class, that tree would be absolutely stuffed to capacity underneath and spilling out into the living room with piles of gifts.
If I was having Christmas, kids get 1 thing each, right? 1 person, 1, right? You're 1 person, you get 1 present. That's how it works. Santa got room in there for more than 1 thing per person. Okay, but in terms of actual Hanukkah, right? For anyone out there who doesn't know the story of Hanukkah, you can read it on the internet, but I will summarize it for you, right? The Jews, right, were in Israel, and there was the temple, right? So if you know the Western Wall, the Wailing Wall, where the Jews pray in Jerusalem, supposedly that wall was merely a minor piece of a retaining wall of the temple, right? The temple, right?
Yep.
The literal giant temple where it was fucking enormous. I don't know. I can't really believe.
Now, of course, the historiosity of that edges more into a bumper sticker that says "My other car is a Ferrari."
Yeah, it's like, can I really believe that the temple was as big as they say it was, right? It's like big. It's like the size that they claim it to be would be like greater than like any construction, right? Greater than pyramid, whatever. But anyway, they believe that, that temple was the place, right? After the Jews wandered around, right? Leaving Egypt, which never happened. They went to Israel and Jerusalem. They built the temple. It was actually the second temple. By the time of Hanukkah, it was the second temple, right? The first temple was they built and destroyed, and then they made another one. And the temple was like, it's not like a temple like the one you have in your neighborhood, right? It was the temple, which is the place where you could literally sacrifice goats and God would receive them. And it's like you could talk to God in that temple. That was the one, right? It's like he wouldn't listen to you if you're in some other temple, right? It's like this was the place, right? Like a holy, important place. Anyway, obviously, the truth of that and the truth of the Hanukkah story greatly in question.
Yeah, the archaeological evidence section of Wikipedia on this temple is 3 paragraphs long total, so...
Yeah. Anyway, but, clearly there was something there because a piece of it is still there. And the second temple, the story of Hanukkah is the second temple was there, right? And, the Jews, there were these Jewish tribe called the Maccabees, right? We're sort of like, warrior Jews, I guess, something like that, right? And the Assyrians, or just Syrians, right? They were warring in those times. And, the Jews are resisting. And the story goes, right, that, in the temple, they wanted to keep the lights on, right? They didn't have enough oil to keep the lights on. And somehow, miraculously, the oil that should have lasted like not long at all lasted for 8 days, right? Some sort of miracle that clearly didn't happen. And the Jews won, right, in the war. And so that's the story of Hanukkah, right? The reality is that in terms of Jewish holidays, Hanukkah doesn't rank, right?
Yeah.
It's like it is not it was like the actual Jewish holidays that are like serious, right? Are like, Rosh Hashanah. I always say Rosh Hashanah. I guess I could tell this. You know why I say Rosh Hashanah?
Yeah, we've talked about this at length. The problem is I say it that way because of you, because we find it funny, just like you mispronounced solder.
Well, do you know why I mispronounce it though?
Oh, I don't actually remember.
So
now that I think back,
pronounce solda, right? Is because
because you learned to solder from that guy who said it that way,
from an Australian guy,
yep.
Right? But so when I was in high school in the Jewish youth group, one of the youth group people had his brother, I think, or father, someone was a Vietnam veteran who was a Jew who came to tell us, about the Vietnam times. He had his shit together mostly, right? His body wasn't in great shape, but his mind was, pretty good considering the circumstances, right? He went to Vietnam and his goal was to live and come back, right? And that's how he was in charge of his little platoon or whatever. And that's what, when he had like, gung ho guys who wanted to, kill them all, he kicked those people out, right? So I think that's how he made it through. But anyway, he was a Jew and he got leave, legitimately for Rosh Hashanah, right? And he told us that when he was, walking around on leave, some MPs approached him and were like, hey, you're supposed to, you're really on leave? Show us your papers, right? So he showed him the papers, which were legitimate papers that said he's on leave for Rosh Hashanah.
Oh, you did tell. I remember this. You did tell me this story.
And the MP is like, what's this Rosh Hashanah business? And so that's why I always say Rosh Hashanah, even though it's Rosh Hashanah. So anyway,
I did say Chipotle at work last week because I ended up eating. I ate at Chipotle, and someone just straight up
literally. You work literally next to Los Tacos Numero Uno, and you went to Chipotle.
I was on the other side of town doing something. I was not. Believe me.
I haven't eaten at a Chipotle in years. Anyway,
I was up at the other office. If I was at the 120 Park office, I would have been at Los Tacos Numero Uno.
Rosh Hashanah, correctly pronounced Rosh Hashanah, is like top holiday. Yom Kippur also top, like seriousness. Passover, right? And some Jews will perhaps accurately tell you the most important Jewish holiday is Shabbos every week, right? Every Friday night through Saturday night is like the most important Jewish holiday. Hanukkah doesn't rank in Jewish holidays. Yep. It's not that important.
But it happened to be around the same time as the dominant white Christian holiday that completely overpowers all American pop culture every year around that time, and has for a very long time.
The same way that the Jesus birthday happened to be sometime around the Saturnalia and the pagan Yule, right? It's like, so what happened is some decades ago, right? When all the Christian kids are getting their presents and doing their Christmas, the Jews were like, yeah, you know what? We got this Hanukkah. It's pretty close, right? I'm sure you could look up actually how this happened. Maybe someone did it on purpose, like with Kwanzaa, which was on purpose.
Well, that was probably Hanukkah Harry, just like the real, the saint that Santa Claus was based on. Maybe Hanukkah Harry was real.
Yeah, maybe.
Hanukkah Harry, who is the name we now give to whoever started purposefully conflating Hanukkah with those holidays to give the Jewish kids something in pop culture.
Yeah, but, Hanukkah just became like, the thing for Jews to celebrate during the holiday season so they could get presents for their kids, capitalism, not feeling left out, etc. Right? And I think that's sort of like, I guess not every, but like lots of different cultures and religions have done sort of the same thing, which is like, around the December times, they do something even if they didn't originally have something. Right.
See, if I was making a new religion now, like say something bad happens and I have to form a cult, that's probably my go-to if society collapsed, as I have said many times in my life. I would make that holiday in February, because the idea I would have is February is when you're sick of this shit. It's the coldest.
February sucks ass. It's when we need a holiday the most.
Yep.
And all we got is shitty fake Valentine's Day.
February should be the month of don't do anything.
Yep.
Forget a day of rest. We get a month of rest. That's how I'd do it. That's how my cult will operate after the apocalypse.
And I'll just say, right, as a Jew, right, it's like, when I looked around my town, there was plenty of Hanukkah going on, right? Because we had a disproportionate number of Jews relative to the world and national population. But I didn't realize until later on, like how little Jewishness there was around everywhere else, right? And so I perhaps didn't appreciate, right, fully. I did appreciate somewhat, right? But I didn't, I should have appreciated even more than I did, right? It's like when I saw like Hanukkah stuff on TV or something, I'd be like, oh, look at that, right?
Yep.
Oh, we got some, right? But I should have been perhaps 2 or 3 times more excited about that because there's not a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, Rugrats was like the one thing that had a Hanukkah, and we were like, hell yes.
That and Adam Sandler's song, actually, like, there's a reason why that song...
a Jew.
Yeah,
so-
but that song pierced non-Jewish pop culture. Like, people know that song. I'm not Jewish. I knew that song. I know all the words to that song.
That song was a big deal in 1990, whatever, right?
In Catholic school... Funnily enough, unlike a lot of other Christian denominations, like pretending to be Catholic as a young atheist in a Catholic school, the school actually did a better job than a lot of other schools of teaching about other religions. And they would do like a Hanukkah thing every year, but it was very simple and stereotypical. We'd all make dreidels, but they didn't explain what the dreidel was. We just make them.
Gambling.
Yeah, they did not explain that. And they would give us gelt. Not really explaining it.
Not really delicious. Worse than Hershey's, but
yeah.
At least it comes in fun gold foil wrappers.
And usually we'd have the Advent calendar, but we would also do the menorah in the Catholic school.
Yeah, there's something about, the menorah. It's like there's like this specific candle you put in the menorah. You buy this box, right? And it has like this like, I at least I recognize the box. Like, it's like, that's the only Hanukkah candle is the one that comes in that box.
Yep.
I forget the name of it. Hanukkah. What's the name of the stupid candle? Do a Google search. There's other brands nowadays that have taken over, right? But there's one specific one that's like the real one, right?
Yep. I've seen, because New York, very Jewish city, a lot of, there's like everyone's got Christmas and Hanukkah stuff out, like very visibly. And in a lot of capital markets, like firms in their lobby, they'll usually have an extremely stylized to the point of almost being unrecognizable menorah.
Yeah. All right. I found the box, but the box actually, I guess the reason that I never had a name for this particular box is because it doesn't have a brand name on it. It just says, 44 twisted candles made in Israel, Hanukkah candles, kosher, right? Product of Tel Aviv, Israel, telephone number, 44 candles, right? And it's this very specific artwork. And the candles, like, they have this wax that smells a specific way and melts pretty quickly, actually. They don't last very long. For a holiday about oil that lasted too long, the Hanukkah candles sure don't last long at all. Right?
It's to remind you that light was hard.
You light that shit after dinner. That shit's melted before you go to bed.
Yeah, meanwhile, Catholic...
because you won't create a fire hazard.
Catholic churches, like really traditional ones, there's the big candle. I forget all the details of why we have it or why they have it.
Is it like the votive candle or whatever?
No, votive candles are a different thing. That's the thing you see in movies where like someone lights a candle for someone who's dead, and usually there's a dramatic scene around it. There's movies where like the assassin will go like...
Jews have the candle for someone who's dead. It's the yahrzeit candle.
Yeah, but there's another candle that... It's just the same candle forever. Like, it'll basically, if you just lit it and left it lit, it will burn for fucking ever. And they light it like it's special times, and they keep the same candle forever.
Mm-hmm.
But I found something great just skimming through the Wikipedia article on it, because I have associations, mostly hanging out with you, of like, one, celebrating, in quotes, Christmas by just going out and getting Chinese food, which feels like a very Jewish holiday tradition, going to see a movie. But also... food, like latkes. We'd always like made latkes around this time of year.
Well, the reason you make the latkes for Hanukkah is because it's a holiday about oil. So you got to deep fry shit, right?
So there's a section in the Wikipedia article, there's a paragraph, I'm just going to read it really quick, that talks about what Jewish cultures in other parts of the world, like what is their go-to food around Hanukkah. Indian Jews traditionally consume galab jamun, which is a like fried dough thing that I actually am a big fan of. Yep. Let's see. Italian Jews eat fried chicken.
Yep.
And they make a latke-like thing out of ricotta. Fratello de riso per Hanukkah, fried sweet potato pancakes. Romanian Jews eat pasta latkes, so again fried. You see the theme is holding true.
Oil.
Syrian Jews eat a dish made with pumpkin and bulgur wheat that is similar to latkes.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole paragraph. We ran out.
All right. But yeah, it's an oil-based holiday. It's going to have oil-based foods.
Yeah.
Right?
I am a fan of oil-based foods, and I have enjoyed many a Christmas having Chinese food with you and our other friends.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about the latke that's most important isn't really the fried potato, which is, a pain in the ass, right? It's the topping, right? You got sour cream and you got applesauce. And you can also go both at the same time.
Both at the same time is the pro move.
A lot of people, but it's some people, they don't like the applesauce. Some people don't like sour cream, they do it wrong.
Yeah. Thing is, what we did wrong was frying it wrong. We fucking sucked at that. We know how to cook so much better now.
Listen, if you go to any Jewish family's house for a Hanukkah festivity, there's going to be basically fighting because about who's going to fry the latkes. Because even if you don't it's not hard to make them. You shred up a potato on the box grater or your food processor.
And if you know even like the bare basics of cooking with oil, you will not make the mistakes that we made in college.
Right. You put some flour and some other stuff in with the potato.
Also, get the oil hot before you let the potatoes touch it. Otherwise, the oil just goes right into the potatoes and they're horrible.
Yep. But even if you use the mix, right, which doesn't taste bad at all, instead of doing the potato, it saves you a bit of work. You can't avoid the frying part. And it's like frying them kind of sucks and is like annoying to sit there and baby them and get oil all over you.
You got to baby them way more than what I would say you baby a typical fried dish.
Yeah, so there's always going to be some sort of argument about who's going to do it. Right? Who's going to get forced to actually make the latkes. Everyone wants to eat them, right? But no one wants to make them.
I imagine two parallel threads of contention, because contention thread 1, nobody wants to be the one stuck in the kitchen fucking making them. But contention thread 2, nobody wants whoever's shitty at it being stuck making them.
Yep. But yeah, so, it was always interesting because it's like, you got these 8 days of Hanukkah, right? But you would still want to do, it's 8 days. You're not going to hang out with your extended family for 8 days.
No, even at Christmas, we would visit one set of grandparents on Christmas Eve and another one on Christmas Day. And that was already, the entire family is at 150% capacity of seeing relatives, and nobody wants to meet up again after that for a while.
See, we were in, I guess, a lucky situation that there were only cousins and children which are all similarly aged on my father's side. No one really on my mother's side. So we only had to get one extended family for a Hanukkah, right? And so, you'd have your 8 days and you'd, at home after dinner, it would be like, we finished dinner, you'd light the candle, you'd get a present, right? Whatever. Sometimes you'd just be going to school the next day. You'd come home, get another present. Mom's hide him in the basement. And then there would be one day where you'd get the extended family going on. Might not even be during the 8 days if you couldn't manage it schedule-wise, right? That would be the extended family Hanukkah presents for everybody. And then we got old, and around the time when we were in college, right? Everyone was similarly aged. We just sort of... I think one time we tried, everyone buy presents for everyone kind of deal, right? And it was kind of meh. And then we're just like, you know what? Buying presents is a pain in the ass, right? All of us are lucky and privileged and well off enough to buy shit we want for ourselves, right? No one fucking wants anything. Let's just, the present we'll all give each other is not having to fucking go buy presents for everybody. Right? And we just sort of stopped the Hanukkah, right? At least for the extended family. I got a electric menorah. I actually made a USB powered menorah some years ago, right? And I'm just like, you know what? I don't believe in any of this nonsense, obviously. But it's fun to make. It's fun to have. So, and I can change the colors too. I don't gotta set a fire. Don't gotta melt any candles.
I mean, this weekend I'm gonna go out on the balcony and hang up some Christmas lights for the rest of the year, and maybe a few weeks into the new year, like I do. It's not. I mean, I'm an angry, loud atheist. It's not like I believe in Christmas, but I still I like a good Christmas song, hanging out in the snow.
But I think maybe next week I'll deal with the pain in the ass and make a latke.
Ooh, make a latke.
Maybe this weekend I'll make a latke, even though it's a little early, because Hanukkah starts on Sunday night.
Make the practice latke this weekend.
Make it on Sunday night. Yeah.
All right. So I guess it's time to go see how that hockey game's going. I think we'll stop the show right there.
It didn't start yet because they got some ceremonies.
Oh, good. I was worried.
It's about to start in 2 seconds.
Perfect timing. And end the stream.